Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. My name is Greg Scully. Joining me, as always, we've got Darren Light from somewhere down in Knoxville, I imagine, today. Maybe he's driven up. I don't know. But good morning, Darren. And joining us today, we have Ryan Narus with Archimedes Group. Today, we are going to talk more about the mobile home space that we probably have for quite a while. This is part of our Road to 500 series where we bring guests on that have gotten past that magical 500 unit slash pad count. That seems to be on many people's minds as a goal, ours as well. I would uh, readily admit to. So we pick their brains, see what they've learned over the years, see what they may have done differently, and see what they think about the future. So, Ryan, appreciate your time this morning. We met in
Yeah.
Knoxville, had a great dinner together at a little event, and I immediately said, "Hey, you are doing great. Would you please be on our podcast?" So, appreciate you saying yes to that.
Yeah.
Would you mind doing a little self intro and
Sure.
kick it off?
Yeah. First off, great to meet everybody. I am 34 years old as of this recording. I am a millennial by technicality. And let me tell you something, like most millennials, I bought the lie. What's the lie?
Yeah,
The
I want
lie
to know.
is, the lie is study hard in school, go to a great college, and then when you're at a great college, work really hard, and then you'll get a great job, and then you work this great job, and then you get to retire on a beach one day as you work your way up the corporate ladder. And it turns out that's a lie. And it's a lie because basically what happens is you miss out a lot of your teenage years, late teenage years, studying really hard, stressing yourself out, trying to get into good university. I went to Wake Forest University, good school, made the Aunt Becky list. So that's pretty exciting that someone literally cheated to get into an elite school. That
Oh,
being
I
said,
Becky, I get the reference. Yeah.
that being said, I went to an elite school, non Ivy, but an elite school, if you use that as a metric. And that funneled me into car sales because I had
Right.
the lovely timing of graduating in 2009, right when the market crashed and basically no one was hiring. So even going to a top school did not guarantee me a wonderful job, and I made the most of it selling cars for 4 years, won of a bunch of awards, learned incredible lessons. I call my time selling cars my graduate degree in street smarts because it's basically honor amongst thieves. So you learn how to communicate. It was Catholic school kid growing up. I had no diversity. I grew up in a homogenous bubble. So putting myself out on the street was an education, and you know completely unfulfilled. And so you do what anybody else would do. Oh, I'll go to grad school, right? That'll fix things. So to just throw some student loan debt into this hot mess. And flash forward years of unhappiness and figuring out that basically this corporate, whatever you want to call it, basically just leaves you unfulfilled, underpaid, and overworked and miserable. I mean, I remember when I quit my corporate job to go full time chasing my dream in mobile home parks, I lost 15 pounds. And Greg and Darren, it wasn't because I went on some cool diet or I started working out. If anything, I ate worse. It was straight sad weight. I lost 15 pounds of sad weight because I went from being sad in corporate America to ecstatic chasing my own dream, literally living in a mobile home in one of our mobile home parks. And I did that at that one mobile home park for about 14 months. And then jumped to our next one for a few more months. So call it almost a year and a half of literally living in a mobile home off and on to chase my dream, because I bought the lie that it was just, this is what you do. And 6 years into it, about to be 6 years into it, what I've realized is social pressure is enormous and it's very sly. It's latent. It's not conspicuous. It's not in your face. It's things that you've heard over and over and over again from a million different people that becomes a conviction in your mind. And you just believe that it's true. And uprooting that is incredibly difficult. And even to this day, there's still things that I'm uprooting in my own psyche that basically boil down to this: I'm getting advice from people who don't have what I want. Do you
Yeah.
think a high school guidance counselor is going to help me become a multimillionaire? Possibly, but probably not. Like, is your uncle who's a plumber going to help you scale a real estate business? He might have some great advice about plumbing or managing people, but is this person going to know how to talk to a banker to score some non-recourse debt on a commercial real estate asset? Probably not. It's possible, but I'm not banking on it, right? So, in other words, like, my life had revolved around listening to. I call it lies to be sensational, but the truth is, I don't think anyone in my life was trying to give me. I don't think it was malintentioned, right? I think it was, when you look at wealth, just in general distributions, most people aren't rich. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like a thing, right? Otherwise, you just be like, oh, yeah, everybody has that. We have a grocery store, whatever. We go to the grocery store, right? That's not how it is. If you want to be rich, you have to understand that you have to be fundamentally different than most people. And one of the most challenging things about this is uprooting your own convictions, uprooting what you've just been drilled into your head over and over and over again by people who don't have what you want. And so I don't know if this is the intro we were looking for here,
Yeah,
but
this is great, man. I'm like,
um,
all of my stuff about mobile home parks just went off the piece of paper, but that's all right. No, I like where you're going with this.
t- just
Well,
just
Continue,
and
man.
and
just
right away you are into what your pain point was, and I
yeah,
love that. And so yeah, we'll get to all the good stuff. I mean,
I
this is great.
to just give just I know, because just quick bullet points of who I am, quick resume: Wake Forest University undergrad, psych major, stats minor, car sales for 4 years, won Honda Gold, their highest award out of the gate. It sold just something like almost 900 cars, or about 900 cars in 4 years. It amounted to like an average of 18 and change a month. Um, Loved it until I hated it, and then went back to grad school, Wake Forest University again. I concentrated in business, analytics, statistics, marketing, and operations. So pretty much everything but finance. And then naturally, I started a business in finance, which was the mobile home park space. I worked for Wells Fargo, Carnival Cruise Lines, in their corporate office for their fleet deployment team. Uh, had a bunch of jobs over the years, and then decided I going to start a mobile home park business. And that took me 3 years to find, because I basically realized at the car dealership, the only person that has all the fun at the car dealership is the guy whose name is on the side of the building. So
Hmm.
all of my friends are like, oh, I'm going to be a general manager one day. I was like, enjoy that. I'm going to be the guy whose name is on the building, who rolls into the dealership in his Ferrari to celebrate winning the zone, and then going back to Quail Hollow Country Club and hanging out with very rich people and not
Yeah.
dealing with what you're dealing with. That's what I want to be. And I realized the only way to do that in the United States of America, or one of the only, probably the most efficient way to do that, is to start a business. So it took me basically 3 years to find, looked at over 100 businesses, started a couple that went nowhere, found mobile home parks. And then it took me 2 years to go full time in mobile home parks. And that came with a giant condition of, now I'm not paying myself anything. I've basically paid myself $35,000 a year, up until a couple months ago. And so I could basically reinvest in my own company and build a net worth, because I've opted for net worth rather than cash flow. And flash forward to today, we've bought 20 mobile home parks, roughly 1,800 pads. We've sold three, we're passive in one, so we're actively managing 16. And I'm literally in my house right now. I can do what I want when I want. I've achieved exactly what I thought I was going to achieve growing up, but it did not look at all like how everybody
Yeah.
told me it was going to look like. I had to go and create my own American dream. So that's
Well, you've proven that it's like super easy to do and it's a straightforward process. So we appreciate you just breaking it down into those very easy steps. Because it's so, so easy. Everybody's going to do it.
Yeah,
I just
everybody's
want to touch on, you're on the young end of the lie
Mhm.
of the golden handcuffs and the silver watch or whatever it is. Yeah, I remember back. I was 20 years corporate, and there was a great guy. Marty was his name, and he put 30 years in, and going up into 2008, he was looking to retire. So we knew, a couple years before that, he was looking forward. Shit hit the fan. he saw his retirement accounts, dip by at, 40% was a pretty
Mm.
common number for a lot of people. So he had to hang on. He had to hang on for a few years for things to rebound until it got back to that number that he was comfortable with. And, after all that time, something completely out of his control just, derailed what was supposed to be the white horse into the sunset retirement type thing. It's like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep working. So yeah, it can happen on in the beginning for you or at the end of the career for a lot of people. There's a lot of people in that position. So
So, Ryan, did you just stumble upon mobile home parks? Did you just know that it was out there? And when I think about that, I'm thinking, okay, did you look at all assets of real estate and through analysis you decided, hey, this is the biggest bang for the buck at this current time, this is what I'm going after? How did you choose, this is what I'm going after, mobile home parks?
Hey, listen, was it lucky? Absolutely. But like Larry Bird, aka Larry Legend, used to say, the more I practice, the luckier I seem to get.
Exactly.
So was it lucky that I bumped into a childhood friend while I was interning my MBA internship in Miami for Carnival Cruise Lines corporate, and he happened to want to get into real estate or was looking at to start a business, and we happened to be good business partners, and we happened to both have an affinity for mobile home parks? Like, is that lucky? Yeah, absolutely. But that also doesn't account for the fact that it took me 3 years to find it. I read something like 100 books, talked to countless number of people, started several other businesses, started 3 other businesses that went nowhere. And eventually I found mobile home parks. So was there luck involved being at the right place at the right time? Oh my gosh, absolutely. But at the same time, you make your own luck. If you're not looking for it, it's not going to just magically fall in your lap. Or at least if it does, that's not scalable, that's not replicatable. Like, you have to go make your own luck, you have to be looking for it, and you have to be patient, sometimes for years. That's why I said 3 years. It literally took me 3 years to find it. But then when it hit, yeah, it was totally luck, and it's a fun story to tell.
yeah, but you had some prep on your side. You read all those hundreds of books or 100 books and were actively trying to figure out whatever it was going to be. Um, it's like hunting or fishing. When you see that trophy fish in the shallows, if you don't have your rod with you and the correct lures and the skills to shoot the line out there, all you're going to do is look at that prize. So, and I'm not saying that you necessarily are always teed up to deploy the exact strategy you need to capitalize on every opportunity, but you build some level of knowledge and drive so that when
Mhm.
the luck appeared, you're able to act on it.
So there's this fun thing in psychology called the Tetris effect, and it's literally based off the game Tetris. And the thing that Tetris does to you if you play it for too long is when you walk outside after you put the game down, everything looks like Tetris. Bricks on the wall, like brick walls, start to like kind of come together, and like shapes just start to come together. And the reason why they call it the Tetris effect is because when you look at how limited the human mind is in terms of what it can process in its working memory, it's incredibly limited. And you get to pick what you're focusing on. And if you're looking for patterns, aka the Tetris effect, you're going to start to see patterns. But if you're not looking for patterns, it's not just going to be given to you. You have to decide that you're going to go out and do that. And for me, again, I have this one moment at the car dealership. I was like a couple months in. I was with the guy who hired me, who I really looked up to. I was with a finance manager and a veteran car salesman. And at 22 years old, of course, I'm going to listen to literally everything they say. Or 23 years old, or however old I was. I'm going to listen to everything they say because these guys have what I want, right? And I remember them being like, "Oh, you'll never be a general manager because you're not a blue blood. You weren't born into it." Right. And they're like, look at all the
That's
general
encouraging.
managers. Look at all the general managers. They're all, their last names are either by marriage or by birth are, general managers at these stores. And I remember being like, you know what? I'm going to go out and prove you wrong. I'm going to go out and be a general manager. And then I realized, wait a minute, these people don't have what I want. Do I want to sign up for not seeing my kids' baseball games because I'm working weekends and long hours during the week? Do I want to sign up for $150,000 a year and nothing but stress and meetings where you get yelled at for not selling enough cars? Do I want that? No, I don't. Again, I want my name on the side of the building, but at the time, you hear that from these people you look up to and you believe them at the time. And again, it takes a lot of effort to really take the Tetris effect and manipulate it into exactly what you want. A good book called Playing the Matrix, which gets into a lot of detail about how to do exactly this. I didn't discover it until a couple months ago, but basically it advocates for that and so many other things, which basically come down to, look, there are just so many things, like it is scary how much autopilot your brain is on. Think of it. Do you think about breathing or your heart beating or brushing your teeth or driving your car? That's really scary. Knowing that you get in your car and you're kind of listening to a podcast or music or whatever, and you're not really giving it your 100% focus. Like, your brain is almost not freedom of will, it's almost freedom of will not. And what I mean by that is you're on so much autopilot that you're not really making decisions, you're making decisions not to do things, because then your autopilot takes over. In other words, like, if you're playing the Matrix, so to speak, you need to make those conscious decisions, and you only have a limited amount of processing power and a limited amount of time. And if you want something, you better be crystal clear what it is you want, why you want it, why you love it. Otherwise, you'll quit. And you literally have to kind of program your brain to get rid of all of this bad advice you've got over the years. And it's not necessarily that it's bad advice, it's just not advice to get you to your dreams. So maybe maybe we could start talking about real estate.
No,
now,
no,
but yeah, this
I
is,
mean, I love that side of
yeah.
it sounds, the Tetris is similar to like a kind of the law of attraction, in that you look what you find what you're looking for, or maybe not. That's just what kind of dropped into my mind, is that if when you're done playing Tetris, you go out in the world and you see aspects of it. I was thinking it was the same as whatever you focus on is what you're going to end up finding in the world. So if you're focusing on changing your behavior and looking for opportunities, those opportunities are going to find you, because
Yes,
you've made yourself available to them mentally.
correct. Yeah, and before we hit record, everybody, Greg had a great question. He was like, "Do you think there are any more good deals in the world?" Let me answer that question preemptively. Yes, I do. You know why?
Yeah.
Because I'm using the Tetris effect to my advantage. I am going to go find good deals.
Patterns.
They will present themselves to me because I will be looking for them. If I'm
Creating your
going
own,
out,
and I
yes.
think everything you've said at this point, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
No, you're
creating
good.
your own luck. And another word I think of is momentum. Momentum is created, I think, and that Tetris effect sort of kind of goes hand in hand, if you will, because a lot of people don't understand that. And it's putting in the work, man. That's how you create your luck. Yeah, they look at someone like yourself and hopefully Greg and I and 1,800 pads. Oh, I want to do that, but they're not willing to do the work that creates the momentum and creates that Tetris effect. And I was thinking about, Greg, reticular activation. That's kind of the first thing that came to my mind, is what, you go out, if you have a yellow Corvette, you see yellow Corvettes everywhere. If you have mobile home parks, you see them everywhere, and and these patterns start to occur. And just based on your background, statistics, and all this stuff, I can see your analytical mind turning, but being able to apply it to just like finite stuff out there, amazing stuff.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and again, I think that if I'm going to boil down why, the sexy answer to, well, why do people not get started in commercial real estate, is people don't take action. And while I largely agree with that, I would say it really a lesser talked about answer to that is twofold. There are two reasons why people don't take action. Number one, strategy, and number 2, underwriting. So strategy, first and foremost, strategy is born from strong psychology, strong understanding of who you are, what is going to keep you consistent. And what's going to keep you consistent is a passion for something that you're actually doing. Like Jim Collins says in Good to Great, you need the intersection of what you're passionate about, what's actually going to pay you, aka is lucrative, and what you can be the best in the world at. Because if you're making a lot of money and you love it, but you're really bad at it, you're a small fish in a big pond, it's going to psych you out. It just happens. It's better to be a medium-sized fish in a really small pond, but be bigger than all the other fish, than to be a gigantic fish in an ocean of much bigger fish. There's so it's unbelievable how moved by psychology we are as human beings, even when we trick ourselves into being rational. Because when you experience something, taste, touch, smell, a thought, someone says something, it you process things through your amygdala before it reaches your prefrontal cortex. What does that mean? Your amygdala, we believe, is responsible for emotions, prefrontal cortex for higher level thinking. In other words, you will react emotionally before you have a chance to logic your way through it. What does that mean? You're going to be emotional, and then you're going to apply rationality to emotions after the fact. You must combat this. You cannot have a good strategy unless you know exactly who you are, exactly what you're chasing after, be willing to pivot, but also strike a balance between flexibility and rigidity. And also, you got to beat this idea that there are no good deals out there. The bad deals 20 years ago, some of them are incredible deals today, where you're like, oh my God, 20,000 a pad back in 1990 was a horrible deal. But oh my God, if I could have, this 200 lot mobile home park that I bought for $20,000 a pad today at today's rates, oh my God, it would be a steal. Right. So in other words, in theory, in time, prices are always going to go up. So as long as you make sure you hedge against your downside risk, strategy, it's born out of psychology, and it's not exactly a sexy thing to go, wow, maybe I don't really know who I am or what I'm chasing after. It really hurts. And it takes a really tough person to be able to really confront that, but it is the right thing to do. And it is why people don't get started. And then just quickly, underwriting, the reason why people, and it's not that people don't understand the math. Yeah, you have to understand the math, but realistically, it's not like we're doing differential calculus or linear algebra or just some outstandingly complex, mathematical theorems. No, like this is an IRR. Excel will do that for you in a couple cells. You just have to get the gist of it. And then you have to pair that underwriting with vision. If you don't have the vision, if you don't have at least enough technical knowledge and at least the courage to be like, you know what, maybe I don't get this, but here's my downside risk. The risk is worth the reward. Let's do it. You're never going to buy anything. I see so many smart people who are outrageously talented at underwriting never buy anything because they know how to do the math, but they're too afraid, again, to that psychology piece, or they lack the vision. And if you don't have vision and a strong psychology, that is why you end up never taking action.
Hey, it's Greg from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump onto realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the podcast. Let's stick with the psychology thing a little bit. Maybe you can comment on this. Some of my readings, a lot of our fear is, just evolutionary biology. It's stuff that we used to use that actually used to save us from harm.
Yes.
And now in the modern world, fear are things like fear of losing money or it's not irrational. It's that our fear manifests itself in things that are actually going to do us very little harm physically. And that's what we're reacting to, is a very deep rooted thing in our animal psyche that keeps us from taking risk. And maybe that goes back to what why people don't get into the deals, is that they feel like if they break even or if they don't hit their projections, that it is the end of the world or something, or more is at risk uh, than some money and maybe some pride. I don't know. It's just it's. I think we're unmotivated by fear a lot more than we may realize.
I totally agree. Seth Godin talks about this in his books and writings. The reptilian brain. We
Yeah,
have
right,
to
exactly. Yeah,
constantly fight this artificial barrier to entry, which is ourself, which is our own mind, which is the fear. Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week, talks about this. He goes, what is the absolute worst case scenario? Imagine it vividly, and then what do you walk away from, assuming there's no bodily harm or something devastating like you lose a loved one? What is the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is you're just fine.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
Susan Jeffers, great book. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Spoiler alert. Here's the big takeaway from that book. The root of all fear is the feeling that you don't have control, that you can't handle it. And if you can just label fear for what it is, man, I'm going to feel like I'm out of control. It will help you cope with that. A great book. That's a great book, by the way. That's a must read. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And then The Science of Fear is also a phenomenal book too. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the modern world is changing immensely rapidly. I mean, at 34 years old, my son one day is going to look at me and he's going to be like, "What do you mean you lived before the internet?"
right.
And I'm like, I'm 34. My dad is 70, and he's looking at me like, kid, you have no idea like what I went through growing up in the 50s and the 60s. You don't get the right to say you're old. But the things are changing so rapidly now that it's impossible for our, if we're going to use a computer programming reference, we have like ancient coding buried within our biological coding that we basically have to debug, right? So like go back to 150 years ago, most people didn't really most people the in it was like 1942, if I'm remembering correctly, was the first year that more than half of the United States of America had adults had a high school degree. So it took basically until the World War II just to get people to finish, half of the country to finish high school, right? So then go back 100+ years ago, and most people aren't educated. You don't have nearly the technology we have today. I mean, we're living longer than any time in our history. Like we're in uncharted territory. And like Seth Godin says, and Greg, like what you're alluding to there, we have bad programming that is incredibly appropriate a couple hundred years ago, not to
Right.
mention millennia ago, that is completely irrelevant today.
Yeah, it's unnecessarily holding you back if you can just recognize it. Well, I'm going to grab something from your website, and we'll kind of bring
Sure.
this into to operating a little bit. Is you started with no money, no network, and no experience. I mean, those are three things that are going to trigger this fear that we're talking about because those are significant barriers.
Mhm.
So, can you walk us through uh, maybe some of the steps or what you did with your own mindset to break through? I think what's the Bob Proctor calls it, the terror barrier or something like that. How you got past those significant but not insurmountable. That's, I think some people would say, no money, no network, no experience is it almost an insurmountable barrier. And clearly that's not the case because we're talking to you on a podcast right now about all your success. So uh, thoughts on getting past those three things, and how
Yeah,
did you do it? I mean,
sure.
literally, how did you get that first deal?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm still a very scared person. Fear does not go away. So anybody who's like, "Oh, I'm just going to wait till I'm not afraid anymore," no, like that will
Right.
never go away. The difference is you get better at fear management. You develop this thing called courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, quite the opposite. Courage is you are staring down something petrifying and you are moving forward anyways. You develop courage. You are not born with courage. And anybody I get this a lot. Oh, well, you were in your 20s when you went full time. You didn't have a kid. You didn't have a mortgage. You didn't have this. And it's like, Yeah, I may not have had a kid. I did have a mortgage. I did have a wife. I did have expectations. I did have student loan debt. I also didn't have the luxury of having decades of work experience. So when a bank looks at me, they're like, you know what? This guy's got no experience, but he's not in his 20s with no money, with a negative net worth, right? Like it doesn't matter who you are at the poker table. Some people have better hands than you and some people have worse. It's the question is, how are you going to play that hand? And also for anyone who's like, oh yeah, you know what, like he just, this deal fell in his lap or this happened or that happened. I mean, the truth of the matter is I did not just quit my job. It took me 2 years to go full time. It took me 1 full year to prove I could make money in the space, and then another full year to plan to quit. So then when it was time to quit and go, I mean, it was like I had already done it because I had planned for so long. It was almost, to a certain degree, almost anticlimactic. So it's not a quick, like, oh, this is great. Listen to Ryan. I'm inspirational. I'm going to go jump off a bridge. Like, oh my God, don't, do not do that. Like, David Tepper, owner of the Carolina Panthers. I'm a huge Carolina Panthers fan. I love David Tepper. And he says, strategic risks. You need to place strategic bets on yourself. You need to analyze the crap out of them and be okay if you lose all of it. And again, that's the courage bit. You need to basically be ready to make a massive sacrifice. Like the definition of the word sacrifice is quite literally giving up something that is valuable to you to get something hopefully more valuable in exchange. In other words, it is not a sacrifice if it is not painful. Like it just isn't. Like you have to be willing to give up something very near and dear to you, your house, your job, the security that being at a company for 20 years provides you. Like it's really scary to work up and have, lots of people below you, and to know, if I quit this, I'm not just going to get this back tomorrow if I'm wrong. Like that doesn't happen. That's really scary. But the question is, what do you really want? And to me, how did I really kind of convince myself you know, to make this leap with recourse debt over my head, living in a mobile home, like millions of dollars of recourse debt? I convinced myself by looking at it this way. It's not about me. It's about my future kids at the time, my future kids. What am I going to say to my son one day and myself when I'm 80? If I'm blessed enough to make it to 80 years old, what am I going to say one day, win or lose? If I win, great, I'm a millionaire. If I did it, I put my middle finger up to corporate America and I created my own American dream. Great, hooray, I won. What if I lose? Okay, well, if I lose, number one, at 80 years old, I'm not going to care how much money. I probably am not going to care that I made 10 million and not 20 million. I'm probably not going to care. I'm probably going to care about, did I help people? Did I make the world a better place? Do I have a good family life? And am I proud of what I did when I was in my 30s? And the answer is an unequivocal yes. When I am 80, if I am wrong, I'm going to look back on my life and be like, boy, I had some balls as a 30-year-old. And I'm proud of that. That's how I'm going to react at 80. Not, oh man, you know what? I could have done this thing and I might have failed, but boy, I picked the right decision by sticking at the bank. No one's going to say that. If you study the elderly, what you'll find is the overwhelming majority of regrets by folks that are elderly is what they chose not to do, not what they did. So when you look at it that way, it becomes actually a much easier decision than you think. Once you really just beat out the reptilian brain computer programming, once you kind of establish your own ego based off of talking to people who actually have what you want, uprooting those convictions. And then guess what? It's still really terrifying to quit your job and chase your dream. So that doesn't go away, but at least you've got ammunition psychologically to help you find that courage. And then how did I find my first deal? Well, believe it or not, we got a pocket listing from a broker as two 20 somethings with no money, no experience, and no network. And how did we do that? One word: value. We found a way to provide value to a broker above and beyond what people who had experience and money and networks could do. And I'll tell you how we did that. We found a new broker in the game who was weak at underwriting, and we taught her how to underwrite. Hey,
Oh,
bring us deals. We'll show you, we'll help you make your OM. Don't owe us a penny. Just give us first look. Guess what happened? We found our first deal. So there are, I say this, I would rather be clever than smart, because unless if you're trying to be 1% wealthy and you're trying to do that conventionally by being smart, you better be 1% smart. Otherwise, you can actually just be clever, and the fish, like they say, the fish bite better where no one else is fishing. So yeah, we've bought on-market deals that were overpriced from brokers. We've bought in pocket listings. We've done cold calling, mailers. We've hired cold callers. We've bought wholesalers. We leave no stone left unturned, and we believe in the long game. In other words, it's not going to happen quickly. It's going to be a slow process, and it's going to be like a hockey stick. You're going to like basically feel like you're not starting, you're going nowhere. It's a plateau, and then it just explodes. Like we closed 5 deals last year. We closed 3 deals so far this year in the
wow.
first quarter. Like that's unbelievable to me. A few years ago, you will overestimate what you can do in a year and dramatically underestimate what you can do in 10. If you had told me 6 years ago when I started where I was going to be sitting today, I'd be like, that no, there's no way. But if you told me where I was going to be a year from when I started, I would have been like, oh, wow, that's really sad and depressing.
Mhm.
Like we didn't close our first deal until like 14 months in. So we didn't even get a deal until over a year of doing it. So um, a lot
No,
of lot of
that
answers to one question.
yeah. Well, going back to like the 80-year-old thing, and this is something I heard recently was think about what your older self would want you to do today and do that. It's like, so if I want to be still playing tennis when I'm 80, I should probably be playing tennis now. Or if I want to, or whatever it is, you have to uh, think what advice your 80-year-old self would give you today in order to feel like you want to feel when you're 80, like you said. So that was just something that stuck with me from that. How do you want to look back when at some point, hopefully you are looking back. Um, and I would add, for me personally, I think it's probably true for you. You want to set that example for your kids. Like, this is possible. I was able to
There's
do it.
no better. I'm learning this as the father of about to be 2-year-old, that especially right now when he does not speak English, is that he is much more likely to do what I do than what I say.
Mhm.
Mostly because he can't speak English, but I don't think it's getting much better when he does speak English. I think he's going to
Yeah.
be much more inclined to do what I do rather than what I tell him to do. And what better way to say, don't play the victim, go chase your dreams, than to be like, look what daddy did. Win or lose, win or lose.
Mhm.
If I lose it all and I go bankrupt and I have to move into a mobile home, I'm still going to be able to look at my son one day and be like, it was all worth it. I chased my dreams. And although it didn't work out, like they say, like rich dad, poor dad, whether I'm bankrupt or I have a ton of money, I am always going to be rich because of my mindset. And that is what I want to teach my son and any other future kids that I have, through example, through action, not through words.
And like going back to the fear thing, what's the worst that could happen? If it didn't work out, you were proven to be a successful car salesman. Worst came to
Have
worst, you're like, I can, if this shit hits the fan and it
I go back to
doesn't
sell
go
cars.
our way, I can go back to selling cars,
I paid a
reset
bajillion
if I had to, and start again.
I
So
paid a bajillion dollars for an MBA. If it was truly
yeah,
worth it and not a scam, I should be able to be employed,
right,
especially if I started a company like I did. I should be able to find a job, no problem.
right, exactly. So Darren, you got anything? I was gonna actually talk mobile
Let
homes a little.
well, okay, this is mobile home related. So
All right, right on, man.
let's
Go.
touch on, you guys added value to this broker. That broker was obviously hungry. You taught them how to underwrite. They got you the deal.
Mhm.
How did you finance it?
We didn't. We went to 40 banks and got 40 no's, because it turns out that negative net worth 20 somethings with no experience, no network, and no money are not financeable. So we
Who
had
knew?
to, we went to
Yeah,
40
that's
banks.
shocking.
We went to 40 banks and got 40 no's, some very quick, some slower and drawn out. We actually had to pull a favor from the investor partners we had. They had to pull a relationship to get the deal bought. And the crazy thing is, we bought that deal for 1.525 million, and it sold last year for like 4.25 million.
Oh, wow.
It
Nice.
was a home run for everybody involved.
Nice.
Everybody involved couldn't get financing on it.
Nice.
Couldn't get financing on it. So, anybody listening in who's like, oh, you didn't have kids, or you didn't have this, or, this, it's like, no, I could not have done this it takes a village, like they say.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where you are in life, what you have in life, you're going to have troubles, you're going to have barriers to entry, and you're going to have to, like, what is it? Marcus Aurelius says, the obstacle becomes the way. Like I have some people that I know that are complete trust fund kids who are like playing in real estate. Like, look at me, I'm doing all this stuff in real estate. And it's like, you're playing with daddy's money. And how cool would that be if I had what I had now with my own money, and I didn't have to sell out of, 3 mobile home parks if I could have kept them, and I'd had so much money now. But you know what I would have exchanged for that? I bootstrapped a company from nothing. And I now know how to bootstrap a company, and I now can always say I'm self-made in that vein. I didn't have a trust fund and, a small, a dream and a loan of $1 million from my dad. No, I didn't have that, right? I had nothing. My dad did not give me a penny towards my mobile home park dreams. He actually, funny story, and I kid with him. My dad was like, oh, you're going to go play with Monopoly money now? I'm like, it's funny about Monopoly money. It actually functions as real currency, and things, you can actually buy things and make a profit on them now. So I joke with them now. But yeah, I mean, like, on the one hand, it's like, God, what if I just was a trust fund kid and I had all this money starting out? But then it's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't have appreciated it. I wouldn't have learned what I learned. It's like when you have a deal, is a home run, and you are going to bank after bank after bank after bank and getting literally 40 no's, and you get desperate almost. It puts you, it just, the education you get out of that, when the ships are burned, so to speak, to use a cliche, when you've burned the ships and it's like, this is it, you just learn things that you will not learn when it's cushy. So
Absolutely.
anybody listening
Absolutely.
in who feels like they have to have money to get started, no, you don't. You don't have to be a trust fund kid. You don't have to have all these advantages to get started. You just have to get started
Yeah, and stick with it.
and stick with it.
Because
Yes.
it might take, what you said, it took 14 months to get your first deal. I think it took us, I don't know, I was easily in
A
2
year.
years before my first truly active role in an investment. Did some single family stuff in a limited thing, but before I was truly active, it took a couple years. Before we run out of time, and before we started recording, you said you might have some contrarian answers to the following question, Ryan. Is the mobile home space a dying asset? And this is, we don't, we've looked at some mobile home parks. I don't know a ton about the space, but here's my reasoning for that question is that part of the appeal that is often touted about it is that every year X amount of parks go away through attrition or redevelopment or something. And I was thinking that, well, at some point, could the asset class go away completely? Maybe for regulation risk, in that many communities don't actually receive a lot of property tax income from them. And they might feel that this land would be put to some higher use for some reason, and we're just going to mandate them somehow out of existence, and the affordable housing that it provides would transfer to something that I don't know what it is, what it would, container housing or micro homes or something like that. So I was like, okay, there's potentially some regulation risks. from local governments. So I'll lob that at you.
Yes, I think mobile home parks is a dying business. Yes, that is a controversial answer, and I will tell you my rationale for it. I'm generally speaking an optimistic guy. Why am I saying something so pessimistic? Well, first and foremost, if you go to business school and you spend way too much money on it, you will learn this thing called the life cycle of a business. In other words, the launch, the growth, the maturity, and decline stages of the life cycle of a business. Mobile home parks are not in the launch stages. That was decades ago. It's not in the growth stages because right now there are a handful of mobile home parks a year that are developed. It is incredibly expensive to develop one. On our podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, we interviewed Ryan Gibson, who is developing a mobile home park, and the story will make you want to throw up. The amount of politics and red tape and all of this stuff that he had to go through to develop this is insane. It's cost prohibitive. It's, to your point, Greg, it is the tax revenue is not there. The amount of ambulances, fire calls out, the fire engines called out, the schooling, all of that, it is not tax effective, and they're eyesores. They are eyesores. Local governments do not like them. For the most part, they do not like them unless they're in absolute desperation mode, which you're seeing in like the Raleigh, North Carolina area. In the Charlotte area, we know the local folks by and large in almost every county, and they all hate them. I mean, they will almost directly say, I hate them. And it makes sense from a follow the dollar standpoint. So then the question comes back to, why is it in the maturity phase beyond just them getting phased out and not rezoned? Well, there's not really much innovation in this space. It's not like someone's going to come in and find a way to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to revolutionize the space. It's just not going to happen. You're not in the growth phase anymore. It is slowly declining, and we are at risk to have some disruptive technology come in and wipe us out. 3D printing, for
I was
example.
just thinking 3D
3D
printing
printing
would work really well.
could absolutely end this industry. And what you will have is the owners of these parks will hold on to it and sue, and it will be a slow death. It is like the ice industry. Great example. The ice industry was everything back in the early 1900s before you had refrigeration. I mean, that was it. You had an ice box, you pick up ice. It was expensive. It was hard to carry around to keep cool because of the technology. Now what has happened, it has gone way beyond it's way deep. It's so deep into the decline phase that it's almost just a niche product now. Beyond just the ice at the front of the grocery store in a bag that's just convenient, you have ice sculptors, and that's about it. So it's not completely dead as an industry, but the innovative technology that came in was storage, and it's storage within people's houses, and this thing called an ice maker in your refrigerator. When you look at business, and this is a tough pill to swallow for people, businesses die. Even the Dutch East Company, which is like the richest company of all time, died. It died. Sears and Roebuck. It is effectively dead. Like when you look at Kodak, effectively dead. When you Blockbuster, basically dead. There's like one Blockbuster left, and Dish Network owns the rights to it. When you look at business, you have to look at history. Yeah, history, it changes and changes rapidly, especially nowadays with technology. But boy, does history repeat itself. And if you're not at least a student of history and at least consider it, you're going to be a deer in the headlights at some point. So what does this mean for people trying to get into the space? What it means is you should not go into this going, I'm going to hold this for 30 years. That's a mistake. Infrastructure will die. Homes will burn down. You'll need to replace homes. You're going to need to dump in capital. Your depreciation tax shield's going to go away. At a certain point in time, you will want to sell. A good entrepreneur, a good real estate owner, and just a good business person in general understands and appreciates the fact that even if everything goes right, there is an optimal time to sell. And at some point in time, you will not be the owner of said business or property anymore. You are either going to sell it or you are going to die. And let me tell you something, being in a space with a lot of mom and pops, when you die and you leave this property to your kids, like 9 times out of 10, that does not end well.
That's where
Yeah,
you're buying stuff from.
yes, that is exactly, because yeah, occasionally you have the kids who are gung ho about it, love it, they're in the weeds, and it needs to be a family business going forward. But it's something like there's some crazy statistic like like by the third generation, wealth is gone. Like and over 80% of the time, once it gets to the grandkids, it's already it's spent and there's nothing left. And so the question is, at what point in time do you sell? And when we are teetering on being in a decline, we are dying a slow death, and we are vulnerable. Our neck is exposed to something like a 3D printing. Now, is that going to happen this year? No, I can almost guarantee it's not going to happen this year. It's probably not going to happen within 5 or 10 years. But if you're buying this, like if you're like, Ryan, you're 34, why don't you keep this to your 64? No, I'm not going to do that. My infrastructure is going to fail. I'm going to need to bring in new homes. I'm going to need to dump in capital. My capital will need to be recycled. It will not be the most appropriate capital for the properties that I own today. Like, it's how it works. And just being in business in general, you need to time your exit optimally. And so that is incredibly controversial to say, and it's really hard for people who are stuck in corporate America looking at mobile home parks or real estate in general, going, boy, I really want to quit and go full time in real estate. What do you mean I'm not going to be a lifetime holder of this? Yeah, it's really hard to hear, but guess what? If you liked what I said earlier on this episode about psychology, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You need to hear stuff that gets a visceral, guttural negative reaction to from you and go, wait a minute, is this my reptilian brain? Is this me being emotional and then adding logic to it? Or do I really need to hash this out? And let me tell you something, this is something amongst a whole slew of things you need to really have tough conversations with yourself internally about. And that's how you become different. And when you are different and you are looking for opportunities, you'll find that they're everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's interesting. Yeah, the 3D printing. Maybe you'll just take that capital off the table and redeploy it into prop tech, or
Yeah.
technologies or something. But yeah, you got to be constantly looking for the optimum time to buy, or semi-optimal time, because things don't always go the way you want, and most things are completely out of your control.
Yep.
And you have to be able to react despite what your plan was. So that's awesome. We'll end it here. I know you got a bit of a time constraint. Not a lot of mobile home park talk, but
Sorry about that.
no, I love these kind of discussions.
Yeah.
So I found it very stimulating and interesting. So no apologies necessary. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Darren, you got anything you want to add?
No, I am just pretty blown away because I didn't expect this much. God, how do I say, analytical thinking, just the psychology comments, mindset stuff, which I'm very grateful for and I thrive on. But Greg is an incredibly critical, analytic thinker, much deeper than myself, which I appreciate. That's what makes our partnership, we're different, we leverage each other. But I would love, I think we should have him back on and just talk about more of this psychology stuff, man, because this is
Sure.
This is good stuff because it can be applied to anything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I agree. This is stuff just how to live your life. It can come in super handy for business. Absolutely.
And Ryan, I don't know if you've thought about it or not, but I think you should write a book, dude. I'm
Brian has written a book.
Maybe I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll have to buy it then. Is it about mobile home park investing or just
no? It's about how to buy a car for the best price using psychology.
All right, interesting. So I can apply it to anything then, right?
Yeah, you can. And Actually, I want to just make a quick comment on that, and I would love to come back on it. I thoroughly enjoy spending time with both of y'all. Um, Listen, I think when you when you look at memory and how it works, anybody listening in on this will probably at best remember one, maybe if you're lucky, two things from this whole
Sure.
hour that and change that we spent together. And I think the reason why I'm happy that you both wanted to spend a lot of time on the psychology piece is because, I could tell you all sorts of cool, fun stuff about mobile home parks that you'll forget, or you can walk away having consumed vegetables and not ice cream, right? And the vegetables is if you want in on real estate, if you are struggling to buy and quit corporate America and chase your dreams, if you are struggling to bust through a plateau, you need to understand that it's probably more psychologically driven than market driven or anything else. And if you understand the fact that most people don't spend time on psychology, and if you want to be competitive, you have to be different. Well, let me tell you something. If most people have artificial barriers to entry caused by their own psychology, and you can go, wow, what if I just beat my own ego to death and just put it on the chopping block, and just be brutal to myself, but to get to uproot some serious convictions that were holding me back. I think if you walk away from that going, yeah, you know what, I really should eat vegetables more, I think that's probably a good thing to walk away from this episode with. So thank you for letting me kind of like get on my pulpit and
No,
That's
it's
awesome.
awesome.
sell vegetables and not, candy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my reading is tied around this stuff. Very more of it needs to be business, but I actually spend a lot of time on. It's not goofy stuff, but I was going to say goofy stuff like this, but I don't find it goofy. I find it interesting. But how do we get a hold of you, Ryan? I know you have a mentorship program. It's
Yep.
over at archimedes.com is the business website.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to say? We'll of course drop it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
But
Listen, another thing that I discovered about myself, I kind of alluded to when I'm 80, looking back on my life, is how many people am I going to help? So if you're listening to this, know that my life goal is to leave this world a better place for having been here. What does that mean for you? I don't care who you are. If you're unemployed or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I will help you for free. I don't care. I thoroughly enjoy helping people. If my words inspired you and you think I can help you, oh my God, reach out to me. I am not hard to find. My last name is Narus. It's spelled Narus. If you Google me, I am the only Ryan Narus in the world that at least shows up on Google. I
yeah,
am an open door on LinkedIn. You can, that's probably the best place to find me, or go to my website, archimedesgrp.com. That's the first or second thing that shows up. You can email me directly through my website or LinkedIn. Oh my God, connect with me. I have a podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, where I go I sell lots of vegetables there. I spare no details about how to own, operate mobile home parks, buy deals off market. And there's a ton of great stuff in there, period, that are not even related to mobile home parks. So, and then also, if you're like, I want mobile home parks and that's what I am meant to be when I grow up, I have a mentorship program. It is incredibly selective. We only we have 6 people in it right now, and that's too many. But one guy's dropping off. So right now, as of this recording, we're full. It's very selective, but it's for people who are like, this is it. I'm going all in on mobile home parks. And so that's an option too. But if you don't make it, you don't make the cut, or you're not convinced, I don't care. I will still help you for free. So chase your dreams, reach out to me. I ain't hard to find. I want to help you. You don't owe me anything. Ryan Narus, awesome. Greg, Darren, thank you so much for having me on. I was honored to be here and share what wisdom I've accumulated in 34 years. And I hope everyone listening in got something cool out of this.
yeah, right on.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Ryan, for joining us, Darren. As always, we'll see you tonight at the meetup. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Real Wealth Solutions podcast. If you found this useful, think somebody might benefit from it. We appreciate the share, and we also always appreciate you subscribing and liking as well. So until next time, we will see you on the next episode. Later, everybody.